Hey, it's Alex Brown from Steel City Sports Talk, and today I'm going to be breaking down the Steelers running back situation. I know it's all locked down up front with Najee Harris, but what comes after him is what's really interesting. And before I get started, though, I want to encourage you to go and watch my friend and my broadcast partner Ryan Berry's breakdown of the Pitt running backs, which he put out last week. It's a tremendous video, and I think you'll enjoy it if you watch this one. And he'll be releasing his position preview for the Pitt wide receivers coming up in the coming days as well. So I encourage you to watch that one as well and watch all our position previews as we lead up to training camp. We're in August. We're a month away from football, both college and NFL, and it's exciting times. So let's get started here with the Steelers running backs. And again, I do apologize for the lack of video from NFL for these running backs while they're in the NFL, because the NFL, it is so tough to get video from the NFL because how they copyright things. But we'll get you the best stuff we can moving forward. But let's start with Najee Harris. We all know Najee Harris coming from Alabama, first round pick of the Steelers, number 24th overall in 2021. Last year, he had 307 attempts in the NFL, which was second most in the league, and he had 1,200 even. Yeah, that's as good as it gets. When you get an even number and you get two zeros at the end of it, 1,200 even passing, rushing yards, I should say, last year, averaging about 4 yards a carry. Getting 1,200 yards was fourth in the NFL last year for running backs, and he had 7 touchdowns. That's okay. That's about middle of the pack, but that 4 yards a carry, it's not great. But what offensive line did he have last year? The offensive line for the Steelers was terrible last season. But really, his passing efforts were tremendous as well. 74 receptions for Najee Harris for 467 yards. And he had 3 touchdowns through the air. So he's a dual threat kind of running back now. He's a big man. We all know how his size. He's huge. He's 24 years old, so he has a lot of time here in the NFL to be at his peak. He's 6'1", 232 pounds, probably on a light day, and he's really, really physical, has that pump to his game, and he really is able to get up and down the field with pace, with physicality, with speed, out of the backfield over to the running back side, the wide receiver side. He can line up anywhere you need him to be, and he's able to do it effectively. And that's exactly what you need in a franchise running back. And there's not much more you can say about Najee Harris, except he's the guy moving forward for the next 5+ years, hopefully, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he's a Pittsburgh Steelers kind of running back. He reminds you of the Bus or Franco Harris, somebody that can really ram it down your throats, the pound and ground game attack of the great Pittsburgh Steelers teams that we've come to love here in the city of Pittsburgh. And he's Pittsburgh Steelers running back through and through. And he's a treat. He really is a treat to have here in Pittsburgh. And next, this guy. Now from here it gets interesting. From here it really gets interesting because it's a toss-up who's going to get number 2. So in my mind, it's a toss-up. You got Benny Snell, who the Steelers drafted, believe it or not, 3 years ago now. This is his 4th season in the NFL. We picked him in the 4th round, pick 122 in 2019 out of Kentucky. He's only 24 himself. But get that, he's 24 years old. It's his 4th year in the NFL, and it's Najee Harris' 2nd. And Najee Harris, he's older. He's a month younger, I should say, than Benny Snell. He was born in March. Benny Snell born in February of 1998. So the same age. That's unbelievable. And you look at this difference in talent. At least, I don't know if that's talent or what's been used. I say it's talent because Benny Snell has been really, really disappointing. He's 5'10", 224 pounds. Last season, 36 attempts. That shows how little he was used. 36 attempts. You can't even get like an average. That doesn't even factor in with what other running backs have done because it doesn't even meet the league minimum for ESPN stats. It's so low. 98 yards over that, and he's not even a threat in any of either the running game or the passing game. Back when he was at Kentucky for 3 years, his last year at Kentucky, he had 289 attempts over 13 games for 1,449 yards. That's 5 yards a carry, and he had 16 touchdowns. 16 touchdowns. And look what he's done now in the NFL. Nothing. His best year was 2019, his first year, his rookie year. He had 108 attempts for 426 yards, and he averaged 4 yards a carry. That's his best year in the NFL. Benny Snell, in my mind, he's on his way to getting cut. He's on his way to getting cut because it's not no use for having him. The Steelers didn't give him their 5th year option on the contract, so this year it's a make it or break it. Can Benny Snell make the roster this year? We'll see. Is it worth having him on the roster? I don't know that it is. I don't know that it is worth the time for the Steelers to, if he's not good enough in training camp, why bring him on the team? Why bring him on a team? He was not a threat at all last year. You barely used him. Maybe just get rid of him. Maybe somebody else can use him. But we have Najee Harris, and we have some other guys that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But Benny Snell, I think he's run his course here in Pittsburgh. I don't think there's any use to keeping him around. Wish him the best of luck, but he's gone. He should be gone. Anthony McFarland is the next guy. This is a guy that's his 3rd year in the NFL. He's out of Alabama. Not Alabama, but out of Maryland, I should say. 5'8", 193 pounds, 4th round draft pick, 124th overall in 2020 by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And in college, he was good. He was okay in college. Good enough for a Maryland team that was terrible when they had him. His freshman year was his best year. He had 131 attempts over 12 games. He only started 5 of those games once he started to catch on, but he had 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards, 1,034 yards that year. That's averaging 8 yards a carry, which is remarkable, truly. And he had 4 touchdowns. And then he had 4 touchdowns just through the air the following year, totaling himself for 9 touchdowns in 2019. But a remarkable freshman year for Anthony McFarland. But he really has turned into an afterthought for the Pittsburgh Steelers, even more so than Benny Snell is. He's younger than Benny Snell. He has a different frame than Benny Snell, but he's smaller. He's a little faster. He's a built guy, though. His sophomore year at Maryland was underwhelming, though, considering his freshman year. He had 114 attempts for 614 yards. That's just over 5 yards a carry, which is okay, but it's not what he was doing in his freshman year. I apologize. It was just 4 touchdowns in Anthony McFarland's first year. He did not have 4 receiving touchdowns in his sophomore year. He had 8 touchdowns through the ground. So he doubled his touchdowns through the ground in his sophomore year. But other than that, he had 1 touchdown receiving, totaling 9 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns total if you had his 4 from the previous year, and then he went to the draft in 2020. So Anthony McFarland, is he a factor coming up for the Steelers? I think he is. I think Anthony McFarland is an interesting option. He only has 36 carries in his career in the NFL. It's a change of pace, but he only had 3 rushes for 3 yards in 2021, so they barely used him. He was targeted just 1 time through the air, gaining 11 yards. But Matt Canada, it's his offense this year. It's not Big Ben's not meddling in the offense. I think he's going to deploy multiple backfield options. But another reason McFarland wasn't on the field last year is because he was put on IR in September. He only played 2 games. And if McFarland's on the field through the preseason, I think they can develop a rapport between himself, Matt Canada, and the offense. I think it's very interesting how the workload for McFarland is going to be dealt out. And with this being Snell's final year under contract, I think it's interesting. It's really going to be a make or break it between McFarland and Snell. Whoever is going to win the job in training camp, he's going to be on the roster. The one that doesn't, he's going to be cut loose in my mind. And I think it should probably be Benny Snell that's cut loose unless he proves himself here in training camp. And he should be given the opportunity to do so as McFarland. But McFarland, we haven't seen enough of him, in my opinion. And he has to be healthy. He has to be healthy through training camp. And if he's not healthy through training camp, there's guys that are willing to take his place, and he's not going to be on the roster moving forward. But I think it's worth you give him a shot in training camp. And it's really a competition between Snell and McFarland, who gets that second spot, and the one that doesn't probably is off the roster, because you're only going to take 3 on your active roster, and I would imagine. So I think there's only room for either Snell or McFarland, especially with some of these guys I'm going to talk about here in a minute behind him. Derrick Watt, if you consider him a running back, he's a fullback. But listen to this. Derrick Watt makes the most, besides Chris Boswell, I wouldn't consider him a part of the offense. Take that out of your mind. Let's say Chris Boswell was not a part of the offense. He just got his new contract. His cap hit for this year is just $52,000 under $5 million. But the largest cap hit for anybody on the Steelers offense this year is Derrick Watt. Derrick Watt's cap hit this year is $4.7 million. He had one carry last year. The man had one carry last year for a single yard. For a single yard, and we're paying him $4.7 million this year. Does that make any sense? I don't care if he's great at special teams. You don't pay a guy to do special teams $5 million a season. That doesn't make any sense. And now he's going to be making more than anybody on the roster. That counts quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. Cap hit. He makes a bigger cap hit this year than anyone else on the Steelers offense. That is insane to me. That's absolutely insane. And the Steelers are going to have to address that in some way. I don't know how you do so. TJ Watt's under contract. If you cut Derrick Watt, he's not going to be happy, TJ Watt is, but it's a business decision. It's not the family league. The Steelers aren't a family. They're run by a family, but they shouldn't be operated like a family. It's a business. What are we talking about here? This is the NFL. Something has to be done about this. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. This man he almost makes as much as Cameron Sutton or Devin Bush shouldn't be making that much. But he's not making that much less than Minkah Fitzpatrick. If I told you that Derrick Watt makes half of what Minkah Fitzpatrick makes, he makes more than half of what he makes. That doesn't even make any sense. Maybe he makes an eighth. Maybe he should make $1 million. Derrick Watt, $1 million, go be a special teams captain, which he is. He's a good special teams player. But who cares? Who cares about that? The best, Chris Boswell, he makes just about as much as Chris Boswell makes. And Chris Boswell's like scoring over 130 points a season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Derrick Watt makes one carry on offense. That's ridiculous. And it's something that has to be addressed, and that's a problem because he has not been an impact on the offensive side of the ball. And you're paying him an extreme amount of money just because he's related to your best player. That's the only reason. Nepotism at its finest. It really is. If his last name was something else, let's say if his last name was Barry or Brown, myself or Ryan's last name, there's no way he would have a job in the NFL or at that money. If he has a job in the NFL, it's $1 million. $1 million, no more than that. But because of his last name, he's making that much. And if he hears this, I'm sure he's listening. But if he's listening, he better play better earn that money because it's ridiculous. And the two other guys I'm going to mention quickly here who's going to make up probably this third spot on the roster, a practice squad spot maybe, because I don't think there's any point in keeping Snell and McFarland as your 2-3. One of them has to go. I think one of these two I'm just about to mention should be there. Mateo Durant out of Duke, he's a rookie, undrafted. Steelers bring him into the training camp this year. He's 6'1", 195. Played 4 years at Duke. In his last year at Duke, in 2021, when he was a senior, he had 255 attempts over 12 games. He scored 9 touchdowns. He had 1,241 rushing yards. That's about 5 yards a carry. Through the air, he had 27 receptions for 256 yards. It's about 10 yards, about precisely 9.5 per catch. And that's 2 touchdowns through the air. So 11 touchdowns last year total from scrimmage, but he had a really productive year if you think about it in terms of he had just about 1,500 yards from scrimmage. In the ACC, that was pretty good. And Duke's not a great team either, so I think that's very interesting to look at for Mateo Durant to maybe give him a spot. He's a very similar guy. It's a little bit of a bigger build, similar to Najee Harris's build. Najee Harris 6'1", he's just about 40 pounds less than Najee Harris, but I think it's interesting to give Mateo a shot, and I think he should be given a shot, and I think it's going to be an interesting fit for the Steelers. If you give him, he should be able to get a roster spot between him and Jaylen Warren. That's the other battle. Jaylen Warren, he's out of Oklahoma State last year. His first 2 years in college were at Utah State. Never really got a big shot there as a starting job, and for his senior year, he transitioned over, senior redshirt year, he transitioned over to Oklahoma State. So Jaylen Warren, he's 5'8", 215, so he's smaller than Mateo Durant by a couple inches, but he's about 30 pounds heavier almost, 215 pounds. This man is built. He's kind of like an Anthony McFarland type build. Anthony McFarland being 5'8", 193, but as you said, Warren's 5'8", 215. So it's going to be, he's a big man. He really is. At Oklahoma State last year, he had 256 attempts for 1,216 yards, about 5 yards a carry, 11 touchdowns on the ground, and 25 receptions for 225 yards, 9 yards on average per catch. So that's 1,400 yards from scrimmage, almost 1,400 and a half. So it's very similar statistics to Mateo Durant. How they're looking in training camp so far, I think they're both an interesting option in terms of who's going to make up that last spot. Durant set Duke's single season record for rushing last year. So that's a guy that has rapport with offenses that are able to get stuff done on the ground. He's Duke, a storied history, as we know, with basketball but football as well, been around a long time. And he's toppled over 2,500 run yards in his college career and over 3,000 from scrimmage. Then you got Jaylen Warren once again. To recap him, played one season at Oklahoma State. He was a JUCO transfer via Utah State, and he ran for a team high 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns and was voted team captain. So this guy's a leader as well. So 2 undrafted rookies, Steelers brought in, battling for a spot. And if one of them doesn't make it, which one of them won't make it, they'll probably be offered a practice squad position. But really, it's a battle of two. 2 different battles going on, 2 different people in them. And the winner of each is going to get a spot on the active roster. Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland battling for that number 2. The loser of that will not be on the roster. And then there's the battle of Mateo Durant and Jaylen Warren. The winner of that will get a spot, probably the 3rd on the active roster. And the loser of that might get a practice squad spot. But the Steelers are in a great position. They got, as we know, they have one of the best running backs in the NFL, Najee Harris, as their number 1. And he's going to be a workhorse back. They're probably going to have to run him until the wheels come off in the next couple of years, especially as we get Kenny Pickett more and more involved in the offense. Mason Rudolph or Mitchell Trubisky, whoever the starter is this year, or even Kenny Pickett. Who knows? They have a reliable backfield, and it's going to be exciting for the years to come. And I appreciate you watching this episode. And on behalf of myself and Ryan, we encourage you to listen and watch our other videos that we've done so far in position previews and the ones we have to come, and our podcast that we'll be releasing coming up later this week and beyond. And so thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.